we tell women's stories. We show how women got to where they are today. And I'm really excited to talk to Jadyn Bryden today. Jadyn, you're the vice president of the Xfund. That's an early stage venture firm built to back entrepreneurs who think laterally and experiment across disciplines. You're a pioneering partnership between some of the country's most successful VC firms and some of the world's best research universities, both in the US and abroad. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me today to share my story. So yes, I work with Xfund. We invest in early stage companies. We typically are writing seed checks, some pre-seed checks, and we're generalists. So we're looking at various different industries. The two main categories that things tend to fall into are enterprise and consumer tech. So definitely software forward type of companies. And we work with founders who are coming out of the university context. So a lot of times we'll meet founders while they're still in school, whether that be master's programs, college, and we will not invest until after they go full time. So upon graduation. But it's a nice experience to be able to work with those founders, help them to grow their companies while they're still enrolled and have different university resources so that they're ready to go full time upon graduation.
Jadyn, and I found you through Isabella Mandis, who is your mentee, which was really great to make that connection. Tell us a little bit more about your journey, Jadyn. How did you get to work for Xfund, and how did that align with your sort of purpose or career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I began when I was in college. I was working as a tutor. I've always loved teaching at a company called Harvard Student Agencies. And everything that I do, I try to do the best job I can. And so, as I was tutoring these students, the company HSA leaders came to me and they're like, "Hey, we actually have an opening for a C-suite role this summer, and you do such a good job at this. Like, we think you might be a good fit for this chief people officer role." And I was really excited to have that opportunity and decided, you know what, let me go for it. And so I worked with the corporate team there. And then the following year, I actually ran for president of the whole company. It was the largest race in the history of the company, a 65-year-old company that is student run. And so the team turns over every year. And it was the largest presidential race in the history. So there were five of us running. And so I did not end up winning, but the woman who did win, she was amazing. She came to me and asked, like, "Hey, do you want to still work with our team? Like, we love having you at this company. And like, I want to keep you in here." And so she asked me to just think about what roles might be interesting. What would I want to do? And she was like, "We'll create a role for you," which I was really honored. And I really loved her leadership style, very empowering. And I told her, since I helped make the strategic plan last year in my CPO role, I would love to be the chief strategy officer, which is a role that didn't exist yet. And talked to the board. All of them loved the idea. And so that year, I helped to bring our 3-year strategic plan off of the paper into reality at the firm. And while I was working with the board, I got to know my now colleague at Xfund better. And when the time came for the Xfund team to hire a full-time member in Cambridge, they came to me and said, "Hey, we've loved the work that you've done, that we've seen in this role here, working with you on the board. And so are you interested in working part-time while you're still finishing out school and potentially coming on full-time afterwards?" And so I worked part-time during my last year of school, and then got the full-time offer to join on as the vice president in 2020. So it's been really exciting to be able to see how working really hard at the things in front of me have opened up new opportunities. And I've really enjoyed being able to talk to very passionate founders, hear their stories, help connect them to the right people, and add value wherever I can.
It sounds like you had a lot of incredible role models. I'm wondering if you can shed some light on that. How did they inspire and motivate you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the role models in my life have always really encouraged me to go after what's interesting to me and never let what what seems too ambitious and too far away to really allow it to be that. So like, for example, my mom, who's my first role model, she's always taught me like, you can do whatever you set your mind to. And that's been really sweet to see in a professional setting, where I think about like everyone who was managing me in my time at HSA, they were like, go for it. Like, I'll never forget the president of HSA telling me, hey, you should go run for this role. And I was like, there's no way like that. I just joined this team. Like, and he was like, no, like, even if you don't win, the experience of getting to know everyone on the team, showing your leadership, that will be valuable. And he was so right. And so it's been really cool to see that. And then the woman who did win the presidential election that year, her coming to me and telling me like, hey, you are somebody that we really want to keep around. That was really powerful as well. So these role models have been really awesome. And it's been cool to see how people have really believed in me, and helped me to believe in myself as well.
Jadyn, so what is your main motivator going forwards? You now have this job. You actually just had a baby, right? So you just got back
I did.
into
I
into this
did.
role. What is your
Yeah.
main motivator?
Mhm.
Especially now that you're a mom, and so time is sort of, it changes. Work life
Yeah.
changes after you've had a baby. So
Mhm.
things become much more dense.
Yeah, I would say what motivates me, I think that seeing the way that when you fund a company, you're allowing for a team to really like go after their passion and in turn empowering other people to change the world is super exciting to me. I've loved the people that you interact with and that you meet working in the startup ecosystem. It's incredible. Like I'm really honored to chat with these founders. Unfortunately, in venture capital, there are so many no's that you have to say, before you say a yes. And like for every no that I say, I'm like, oh, how can I help these people? Because even if we're not writing a check, I'm excited about hearing all these different ideas that people are pursuing. And so I think what motivates me is just like being able to see and meet the world changers and have some small part of that, on occasion where I can be helpful. And that is really exciting. In terms of balancing it with having a family and having a little one, I have a little boy. That makes me appreciate the time in each part of my life even more. So, like when I'm at work, I'm like, okay, I really can value the time working with very inspiring other adults. And then when I'm hanging out with a little baby, I'm like, you're so sweet. Like this is such a precious life, and I love getting to spend that time. So it makes me enjoy each component even more, and like having the opportunity to spend quality time with my husband. Like I'm like, this is so nice. Like I know I don't have unlimited time, so I can just savor and appreciate each part of life a little bit more now that it's fuller.
Yeah, thank
So,
you for sharing that. Jadyn, so you've been alluding to that. Tell us a little bit, give us some top tips on how, especially women who only get 2% of
mhm.
VC funding, still in 2024, how can they do a pitch that will be listened to? How does a pitch or a
Yeah,
deck need to
absolutely.
look like?
Yeah, so just the basics of pitch creation. If you Google like what to include in your pitch, it all looks the same. Like you'll hear something about talking about your problem, your solution, your market size, the product, traction, team, competition, and then some iteration of et cetera, et cetera. I think that the way to make your company stand out, is twofold. One thing I would say that is very important is to make sure that you're telling a story. Um, People love to hear stories. Storytelling is the name of the game when it comes to starting a company, sharing a vision, getting people on board with what it is that you're trying to do. And so, if you can become a really strong and effective storyteller, that's going to go a long way. So, telling the story and weaving together the problem that you discovered, how you realized that you were the perfect person to go create a solution for the problem, when you spoke with customers, how their eyes lit up when they learned about what you were building, where you learned to pivot, failures that you came through. Like telling a story in an eloquent way, I think is an edge that specifically women will have, that I've noticed. And so I think really leaning into that strength of storytelling is very effective. The other part of that is a lot of investors at the end of the day, if it's an institutional investor, they are managing someone else's money and they have like a fiduciary responsibility to return the fund. And so numbers speak really well to tell that story. And so for companies that have generated some type of revenue, really showcasing that, showing how you have grown as a company, really highlighting that is really important. And so I think that using those two strategies, depending on where you're at in terms of the revenue, sometimes you just have the story and the vision to share. But if you do have some type of customer base, really highlighting that will help you to get to that next call where you're going to meet the rest of the team and start to dig in more on why your company should, garner funding.
Thank you for sharing that, Jadyn. That's really generous and much needed. Jadyn, so what are your top qualities, would you say, that make you so good at this job?
Ooh, that's a great question. I was actually chatting with a student founder this morning, and she asked me that same question. I think that when it comes down to it, from the investor side, it is a lot of connecting people to ideas, to funding, to other companies, to people to work with them. And so being a people connector, I think is like a top strength that I have. And I think that makes me really good at this role. I also am someone who is good at connecting and communicating well, different ideas. And so when I'm hearing new things that I don't know about, like I love to learn, I love to listen. And so being able to like really take in a new concept that I know nothing about, like I'm always the least knowledgeable in the room. And I love that about my job, because these founders are just so smart. They are really into what they are working on. And so being able to hear those ideas and give feedback on like, okay, like here's how I am understanding you're trying to build this business. Like, is that correct? Where help me to understand what I'm missing so that
Mm,
I can advocate for these teams on behalf of my investment
yeah,
team.
yeah,
That is a really important skill to have because you become an advocate for the teams you want to invest in
yeah.
amongst your own investment staff. And so it's really important to have really sharp communication skills.
Jadyn, and so what does your future look like? What are your goals? What are the next years looking like?
Yeah, great question. I am actually enrolling in Harvard Business School in a couple months. So I will be back in school for the short term next couple of years. After that, I'm actually not sure what's next for me. I have really enjoyed working in startup land. Perhaps I might try to start my own company. That's very exciting to me, the idea of being on the operating side after having been on the investing side.
Yeah.
But there also is a part of me that loves the investing too. So like perhaps there's a hybrid of that where I can do both. So I'm excited to see where life takes me in the short term, but I'm definitely using my time at HBS to kind of seek out what opportunities there are and see what kind of captivates me and grabs my attention. So
Yeah.
excited to see what's ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Jadyn, for taking the time today, for talking to me, for telling your story, and all the best.
Thank you so much.